The West Ham board must back David Moyes in the January transfer window. When I say back David Moyes, I don't mean it has to be his choices. He doesn't have to get his number one target for the positions in which we wish to strengthen. It could be Tim Steiden's, could be Mark Noble's, could be not David Sullivan's, but any of the threes. And if we get it right and it's a significant signing, it could have a massive impact on the second half of the season, and the consequences of that is huge. It could be the difference between European football and no European football. Winning the Europa League, not winning the Europa League. Obviously, this is the biggest possible end result, but that's what we've got to be aiming for. We've got to be aiming to bring in a player or players that can make that impact. We have to. That is the level we've got to be going for, and the board must back David Moyes. Now, in an ideal world, as soon as that summer transfer window shut, Tim Steiden, Mark Noble, with the input from David Moyes, got planning for the January transfer window. The scouts were out doing their thing, bringing names to the table. As the weeks went on, we identified where we need to strengthen, perhaps where we need squad depth, positions we need to upgrade in, players we need to replace perhaps for one reason or another. So that come January the 1st, we know which positions we want and we know which players we want for each position. And Noble, Steiden and David Moyes, our technical director, sporting director and manager, will all be in agreement as to exactly who to bring in. Now that's the ideal world scenario, and we don't live in an ideal world. However, I struggle to see much reasons as to why we wouldn't be prepared for the January transfer window opening. And I just hope for once, we can capitalise on this good start we've had. It's a good start. It's been a fantastic start to the season. Record points after 19 games. We're sitting 6th in the Premier League. We've got a realistic shot for European football, for a 4th season of European football at West Ham United. We've got a shot at winning the Europa League, at winning the FA Cup as well. At the minute, the squad's done really well considering how few bodies we use. There's a bit of deadwood at the club, players with a decent bit of market value that we could do with shifting. But if we get the January transfer window right, and what that looks like will differ from fan to fan, from me to you, from David Moyes to Tim Steiden to Mark Noble. We'll only know in May. But if we get the January transfer window right, it could have a huge impact. The consequences are potentially massive for this club, but they need to back David Moyes. Now, before I go any further, you can guess what we're talking about today. Please do subscribe if you're new to Hammer's Chat. Also drop a like on the video as well by clicking the thumbs up. We've been in this position before. Not this exact position, but in a good position under Allardyce, under Slaven Bilic. Under David Moyes, we've come up to the January transfer window. We're in a really good position. But you get the feeling the board are content with where we are, which is almost like we've overachieved. Under Allardyce and Slav, we were 4th and 5th. David Moyes were 4th or 5th as well. And you get the impression the board were, we're alright with this. Even if we drop a few places, it's still fantastic. It's not worth gambling. It's not worth trying to maintain this. It's almost like a lack of belief that we could finish in the top 4. Now, results would suggest they were correct, but the circumstances play their part in that. Allardyce's contract was running out. He never got back to in January, so it was almost inevitable that we were going to fall off. Slaven Bilic, we were in a good position. We had the Upton Park thing going on, and we didn't bring in. We brought in Emenike. It wasn't good enough. Now, we can make big signings in January. We have made big signings in January. More often than not, it's when we've been in a relegation battle like Thomas Souček and Jared Bowen. Not so much Danny Ings. Jesse Lingard was one of the rare ones where we brought in, we were in a good position, brought him in, and we were able to finish 6th. But that's the proof. Jesse Lingard is the proof that if you get the January transfer window right, and you get a bit of lucky, because let's be honest, that 4 we had was incredible for us. But the impact can be significant, which was achieving Europa League football via the league qualification. It was fantastic for us. And a large part of that was because we got the January transfer window bang on. We need to do it again. Here we are, 6th in the league with a realistic shot of European football for a 4th successive season. It would be an incredible achievement. But we have to give Moyes as much tools as possible in order to go on and achieve that. We cannot make the same mistakes again, which is not backing the manager in the January transfer window. Now, like I said, when I say back David Moyes, it's not necessarily his picks. It's about strengthening the squad, bringing in 1 or 2 players, just 1 or 2, that can make a big difference. You get it right, European football, here we come. Now, before we go any further, this video is sponsored by Manscaped. It's new year, new you. You know the story. Everybody says, I'm going to do this in the new year. I'm going to do that in the new year. Why do they wait till the 1st of January to do it? I do not know. New year, new you and all that. Well, how about new year, new lawnmower, new year, new beard trimmer, new weed whacker, new cologne? Well, you can get all that over at Manscaped, because using all those things, you can have a new you. You can have new facial hair. You can have new, or no, pubic hair. Everything is at Manscaped. But don't worry, while everything's new, it's old code. Hamish Chat, all one word. You use that, you can get the old discount, which is 20% off plus free shipping worldwide. So gentlemen, new year, new you. Well, go get the tools to do it. Go to manscaped.com or follow the link that's in the description. Type in Hamish Chat at the checkout page and you will receive 20% off absolutely everything. Back to this. Speaking of new year, new you. How about new year, new players for West Ham? It's not just new players. Like I said, I'm not expecting wholesale changes. I don't want wholesale changes. One or two. You can get one player that goes into the starting 11 and one player that will start on the bench, but David Moyes will use him off the bench. That would be significant. Those two players can make a huge difference to this team. I don't know who they are. I don't know what the club want. What you and I want and what the club want are different. We know what David Moyes wants. He wants a left-sided attacker. He's been very clear about it. Now, I'm recording this on the 29th of December. We've just heard that Moyes is likely to get offered a 2.5-year contract and he's likely to sign it. So at this point, we're unsure, so things might have changed since recording. But regardless of whether Moyes is staying, I think we have to go out there and get someone. Now, before the news of the contract, I was thinking, because about 3 weeks ago, Moyes said he wants a left-sided attacker because Paqueta's playing there and it's not ideal, perhaps. I thought, well, this will be interesting. In January, if we go get a left-sided attacker, that would suggest that they're backing David Moyes. And now we've heard that he's probably going to get a new contract. I'm almost expecting us to go and try and get a left-sided attacker, because the manager's been very public that that is what he wants. Now, whether he actually wants it or he's a little bit smoke and mirrors as we try and go after a striker, that's something he hasn't done before, we will have to wait and see. Now, I know the club unofficially have been trying to play down how much money they've got to spend. Moyes has suggested there's not much money there to spend, but we'll try and do a little bit of business. It's a little bit contradictory, really, because we also get told by the club that everything's expensive. Everyone's expensive. You want to do business in January, you have to overpay for inconvenience. So to have no money but still do business would suggest we've got money. Now, obviously, the loan market's there, and I'm not against the loan market. I think it's a really viable option. There's players I would like to see bring in that will likely be available on loan in the January transfer window, whether that's Ian Matson, Jadon Sancho, those types of players. I might do a video of my mini geo wish list, but it's not just bringing in players. That's obviously significant, but it's also getting rid of players. Now, I'm ready to get a bit geeky. Some people don't like it when I talk about the squad registration rules. I've even been accused of making the squad registration rules up in the past. I mean, I'll tell you what, if I had actually made them up, I think I deserve like a fair play, because to come up with all these rules, just sitting here on my computer, just making up these rules, making a video about the rules, I think that's almost impressive. The lengths to go to make that video would be incredible. The research, anyway, I promise you I'm not making this up. This is the squad as it follows. So it's a way to get a little bit geeky, and like I said, it's going to bore a few of you, but it's important. You can't just ignore it. There's limitations on the amount of players you can have at a football club. You can't just ignore it and be like, oh, we'll buy him, and him. Well, there's consequences. One thing this club will not do is bring in more players than we're allowed. Other clubs have done it. Nottingham Forest, for example, have done it previously, where they brought in too many players. They had to unregister senior players. There was players on tens of thousands a week they could not use because they weren't registered. We will not be in that situation. So as it stands, in the Premier League, the squad registration will have one space, and it can be anyone. It doesn't have to be homegrown. It could be anybody that we want. So that's good. We can bring in one player, goes into the Premier League squad, nothing happens, sorted. The European squad is where we have an issue. At the minute, we don't have any spaces. We've got one space, but it's for someone that's club trained at West Ham United for 3 years. So we're not buying someone. Unless we're going to go buy Josh Cullen, that It's not happening. So we bring in someone to put into the European squad. Essentially, someone's got to come out of it. Now, I know you'll think, some people might say, well, Conor Coventry, he doesn't count because he's club trained West Ham. So if you bring in a non-homegrown player, a non-homegrown player has to come out the European squad. Sorry if this is patronising. I'm just trying to explain it as best as I can. So if we were to go and sign someone as Belgian, we'd have to take someone out of the team like Said Benrahma and Maxwell Cornet. We'd have to unregister them in European football. So this is why I think it's important that we back David Moyes, not just in the sense of bringing players in, but also selling players. Now, I think there's an expectation Thilo Kehrer is set to leave. I think that's fair. And do you know something? I hope he does leave. I like Kehrer as a centre-back. Hate him as a right-back. I think he's a good centre-back. I don't think he's had a fair crack. I'm convinced something's going on between him and David Moyes or him and West Ham because I think he had a pretty important role last season and looked like a big character, especially when it came to the parade and that. He looked like he'd really got involved with West Ham and the fans and the players. And when we first signed him, Moyes spoke about how he was already a big voice in the change room and stuff. So there was a lot of good things around Thilo Kehrer last season. Not always his performances, or right back, they were not there. But in regards to his character, his contribution off the pitch, that was only positive. Then all of a sudden he's gone from that to 5th choice centre back at West Ham and sort of 3rd choice right back, and the drop off is not only significant but pretty rapid as well. So I'm convinced there's something going on, and as a result he has to leave because there is market value in Thilo Kehrer. He's been linked to a few German clubs. He's spoken about his wish to go back to the Bundesliga eventually, which I think is a fair hope. So hopefully we can get what we paid, 10-15 million for him. Hopefully we can get that in the January transfer window, and that would obviously free up the non-homegrown space in the European squad. There might be a bit of pressure to bring in another defender, especially considering throughout January we'll be without Nathan Gerrard, so we'll let Kehrer go as well. We're now down to half-injured Kurt Zouma, Mavropanos and Ogbonna, who had a really good performance against Arsenal, but I don't think he's going to play like that every time we play him. So I think we suddenly go from one centre-back too many to one centre-back not enough. But backing David Moyes in January transfer window, in terms of moving on players he will not use, I think is important. Cornet, he needs to go. I was excited when we signed Cornet. I think the manager's made it very clear he has no intention of playing him. He's not got a future at West Ham. Again, for whatever reason, we can guess. Unlike Kehrer, we've actually got some bits of evidence as to why Moyes perhaps isn't keen on him, and it all comes down to him going to France for his treatment. He's never really come back from that, which is a shame because I think Cornet was fantastic at Burnley, and I think he's a wonderful player. He can play in loads of positions. I think he's a really good player for us to have. We've just not seen him. He's not had a chance. There's one of them. I think we just need to accept it and move him on while he's still got some market value, because again, you might get 10-15 million for him. There will be clubs in January in the Premier League that are desperate, that are willing to pay money to try and get out of a relegation battle. You look down the bottom there and there'll be one or two clubs trying to get away from it because Luton are looking like they're going to make a fight of this actually, and that's going to scare a few teams. So it might be someone like Nottingham Forest actually that they might look at someone like Cornet and think, you know what, he's worth the gamble, and I would suggest he is. But we can move on one or two players in the January transfer window, free up those spaces in the European squad and bring in one or two. That would be terrific for us, assuming those players can contribute. Hopefully one of them would be a long-term signing. The interesting thing is regarding the striker, because obviously two strikers we're strongly linked with have got release clauses in the January transfer window. So you'd imagine if we do have serious and genuine interest in those, that the bids will go in ASAP, because there's no negotiating to be done. We know what we have to bid. It automatically gets accepted and we can negotiate with the player. Now obviously the struggle is African nations is here and the player will be off to African nations, but if that's who we want, we can go get him, and come middle of February we will have our new signing ready to play. At least the good thing is he'll be match fit thanks to going away to play for the African nations. Big window coming up. We get it right, it could have a significant part to play in the rest of the season. We get it wrong, I would argue doing nothing is worse than getting it wrong, because if you get it wrong, something's happened. Whether we've identified the wrong player or Moyes hasn't implemented it into the team quickly or correctly, which doesn't worry me. I know a lot of people have hesitations or whatever over Moyes taking ages to let players settle in. I've never really had that. I've always felt it's a bit of a myth. I think there's more evidence to suggest it's a myth than not. You look at the current signings that we made, actually. I think Ward-Prowse and Alvarez went straight into the team. I think Kudus had to be patient for the Premier League, but while he was coming off the bench, he was also playing Thursday night every night for us. And then once he's got in the team, he stayed in the team. And Mavropanos, he's had to be the most patient, but that's because Moyes has got his preferred centre-back pairing of Aguerd and Zuma. But again, Mavropanos has had plenty of minutes up until this point, albeit in the Europa League. So all 4 signings have had plenty time as far as I'm concerned, but you look at the other signings he's made over the years, Souček, Soufal, Boyd, they've all gone, Paqueta, they've all gone straight into the team like that. So if you get the right signing in January, I think there's plenty of evidence there to show that Moyes will put them in straight away. We also know the flip side is if you go get the player that Moyes doesn't want for whatever reason, then you might find yourself with a bit of a problem, which is he won't play him. Moyes has shown that he will not play players he isn't particularly keen on. You could argue, why should he? He's a manager. Why should he be forced to use these players? And this is why I go back to the start of the video. Ideally, Moyes, Noble and Steiden are on the same page here. And if they are, it increases the chances of getting January right. If they are, it increases the chances of Moyes playing the new signings immediately. And if both of those things happen, well, we're 6 at the minute, I think we can start to dream a little bit actually. It all comes down to the January transfer window. In the past, we've got to a position of opportunity and failed to take it. We've got another opportunity now. Please, West Ham, back David Moyes in the January transfer window.